Hi there. It's April the 13th, and we're continuing our journey through the good news of Luke, and we're in chapter 16, reading from verses 1 to 18. Now, the first part of this chapter is one of the most notoriously difficult parables of Jesus to interpret in our modern era. Scholars often have different approaches, so this is actually just one suggestion of how it might be interpreted. But in order to understand the story, we also have to look behind it into the culture of the day, and particularly in terms of the way that the Pharisees were finding ways around the law and ways of appearing to keep the law without actually keeping it. So in this story, the factor, good Scottish term, the factor who looked after the master's land and who looked after the economies of it, looked after the bills and the invoices and so on, he finds that his master is going to give him the sack, and so he wants to prepare the way with his master's debtors, the ones that owe his master money and goods. He wants to prepare the way for him to be able to be employable again and to find favour with them after his employment finishes. So he gets them to bring in their bills, as it were, to bring in what it is that they owe. And in this situation, it's important to know that under the Torah law, usury, interest, was not permissible on any loan that was made. But to get around this, what they would do is they would add a kind of a small consideration on it that they didn't call interest, but actually was really a sum over and above instead of interest, sort of a share of the profits it would be. And in this way, the usury was avoided, but profits were taken. So what the factor does is he calls in these bills and he takes out the element of it which is really usury. And so he's not doing anything fraudulent in a sense, because actually the fraud is coming from the society and the culture around. And it would be very difficult for his master to upbraid him or to take him to court, because obviously under the law he's not supposed to be charging interest. And so at the end of the day, the master commends the steward not for his dishonesty, because actually he has done something that's underhanded, but for his shrewdness and for his astuteness. Jesus actually points out that astuteness is something that's worth having in the kingdom of God, and he says that so often the sons of light, the children of the kingdom, don't know how to act astutely. They don't know how to win favour. They don't know how to do things in such a way as to woo the people of the world. But here's an astute steward who is using money to win favour. And so Jesus actually says, don't be afraid to win favour with generosity. Don't be afraid to be generous, because in that way you will win the favour of those in the world. It seems a strange lesson, but Jesus is teaching this. As I say, that's one explanation of this parable. Jesus then goes on to make it clear that we can't serve money and him. We will either hate one and love the other. And Jesus is clearly directing this at the Pharisees, because the Pharisees come back at him and they laugh at him and they dismiss his teaching. So they've been affected by this because Jesus has got under their skin. Jesus says the kingdom is coming. The kingdom is coming. It came in with John, right up to John. The kingdom is coming in, and it's forceful people who take hold of it. It's not the people who are just standing back and apologizing. It's the forceful people who will take it. And Jesus says that the kingdom of God is coming in. He makes a final reference. It seems strange to us, but the reference finally to adultery and divorce. Now remember again that here's another way in which the Pharisees were permitting divorce for all sorts of reasons, but Jesus' teaching is that God at the beginning meant man and woman to be together, and it's only a kind of a way they found round things that allows them to break up couples. And so Jesus is again showing the hard-heartedness of the Pharisees, the hard-heartedness of those who seem to be keeping the law, but actually their hearts are far from God. And Jesus encourages us, we are encouraged to continually walk in the ways of God, to be astute, to be shrewd, to be wise, but also to keep faith with Jesus, not to allow money to control us, but not to be afraid of it, because it's part of our way of dealing with the world around us. So have a very good April the 13th.